Hello all. Hello, hello. I am here to talk today about neurodiverse adult industry workers. Here always and here to stay. Um, if I'm a little off, it's because I'm getting adjusted to using a ring light. This is a clips for sale ring light from FetishCon. So we love that. Now it's making me painfully aware that I might have some stuff in my glasses. Anyways, okay. So my name is Rainier McCall. I am a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida only, an EMDR approved consultant, which means that I am able to, help other people do EMDR as well as do it with clientele myself. Board certified in telemental health, and I'm a qualified supervisor in Florida for people that are in their pre-licensure experience. So working towards becoming an LMHC. And I have been attached to Pineapple Support. I believe I always say since 2018. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I may have been a little earlier, or like just a tick later, but that sounds right to me. So today we're really just going to be talking about why. Why have adult industry workers often been neurodiverse? How have they gotten by? What are we doing? What does even some of these words mean? And we'll just kind of take it from there. So some of you here are probably already going to know a lot about this. Some may get some new tidbits, and some may just get "Hmm, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, may hopefully feel a little more seen, heard, things like that. Right, so what is our agenda? A small, well, knowing me, a bit small, uh, definition of neurodiversity um, from a couple different lenses. Is it on the rise? What's going on there? Why the adult industry? What's the overlap? Um, a little look at the disability justice model, some concepts from there to kind of illuminate the previous 2 points, and just some, final tips and takeaways and things like that. We're just gonna kind of roll together and check it out. I'm gonna have some moments for pondering, perhaps, uh, since you're not catching me live. But I encourage you to take those moments. Almost as if this were online class. I say that loosely because I know many people don't really want to be in class. So respect, heard, no problem. All right, well, let's get rolling. So, mirror, mirror on the wall, what is neurodiversity? Some of you might be looking at this like, bruh, it's 101 stuff. However, I know that sometimes when a word is so used that it's like we know what it means, but it's almost fractures off into its own thing and kind of becomes its own entity. So I'm just going to break down a couple different views of it. Well, hopefully not getting too granular into it, but alas. Um, and sorry for any background noise if you're hearing it. You know, cat litter boxes gotta clean themselves. All right, so neurodiversity is an experience based off of differing brain development and relationship to sensory, emotional, and cognitive processing. With that type of definition, we might look around at a lot of people and think, huh, now that doesn't mean that every person that has some slight differences may want to identify as neurodiverse, may meet criteria, and I say that so loosely, because in my I guess humble opinion, which some people think sounds a little out there, I do think most things are a spectrum and not autism spectrum. But I don't always think that people that may be further along on the line. Same model that I use for dissociation, is that not everyone is going to be at the experience of dissociative identity disorder, that's kind of the further across endpoint, so to speak. And then, of course, the early beginning might be zoning out for a minute, doodling, highway hypnosis. So I think we can see that, it goes from like things that people experience, and then it starts, the spectrum is quite large. So similar to neurodiversity, there might be people that we know that just have a couple little things. Like, I have a friend who does not have autism or ADHD, or a neurodiverse experience per se, although that definition can change based on who you are and what you think about it, but deals with misophonia. That I can't, every once in a while there's a couple sounds that they're just like, woo. Um, so that spectrum model can kind of help. Um, Most importantly, these are just natural variations in brain functioning. Um, and I've talked about some of these points before, but I always like to reiterate them before talking about neurodiversity. Um, there's nothing wrong here. This is what you'd see in any other type of critter or creature. Um, look to dogs, look to cats, look to even your reptiles and fish. We not have some of those that have some little quirks. Um, for instance, I have a cat who only at night though, because he's sitting right next to me currently. Only at night when this litter box is washing, he will sit up on the counter like clockwork, and he just has to watch the drain where he hears the sounds, and he really likes it. I have a cat who, when you sneeze, she gets very upset, but only if it's a certain pitch of sneeze. Who the heck knows, people? So, like, right, these are just normal things. Of course, in animals, we're usually much more gentle than ourselves, and in others, we might be more prone to, oh, you have this, oh, you have that, oh, what's this, oh, what's that, oh, there's something wrong. These are natural variations. So neurotypical slash neuroconforming, whatever language you want to use. Some people prefer either or, are not the norm, really. If we think about that spectrum, somebody that's purely, I have no issue with anything, I have no sensory needs, you could blare music at me and stomp, on the up as the upstairs neighbor, and blow a party horn in my ear and pat me all day long, and I can remember everything photographically, and never have had a forgetful moment. So that kind of sounds few and far between, eh? um, Another little tidbit here is the use of holistic versus autistic when we are getting into a more granular sense of neurodiversity. That's just a choice. Some people like to use that type of language, instead of like neurotypical or whatever. So allistic just means somebody that doesn't have autism, um, instead of being like autistic versus normal person or whatever. Um, Another little thing here is person first or disability first language. Your choice. Um, in in current culture, there's been a lot of work in the disability justice movement to move towards, actually more of a disability first with certain experiences, mostly autism. So like, I am an autistic person. I'm autistic, instead of I am a person with autism. I am a person living with autism, which that would be called the person first, which I know that that's how I was trained uh, in therapy school. It's like, don't define people by their disabilities. That's not okay. I naively was like, yeah, that makes sense. Now, as I get along, it's like, well, there are some that we just, I mean, if not most, there's some that we really can't just untie from ourselves. But again, it's what sounds good to your ears, what makes you feel good about yourself. And just to go back to probably the original point of what is neurodiversity, this is a big, 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 biggie umbrella. I think of it in two models. One is the umbrella model, where neurodiversity can hold TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. It can hold OCD. It can hold Tourette's. It can hold CPTSD and PTSD. It can hold dissociative disorders. It can hold, of course, autism and ADHD. And then there's the more like shorthand model that I feel like some people use when they're using the word neurodiverse or neurodivergent, which is really just, I'm talking about ADHD, autism, or a combination of both, a la ADHD. So just things to know, because some people, I talk to and they're like, wait, I have Tourette's, that's a neurodiversity? And I'm like, yes, and it depends on how you want to define yourself. So, things to think about. Okie dokie artichoke. So kind of the point of this presentation is to figure out some things about neurodiversity in the adult industry. Why does it seem to be on the rise within the adult industry? So I'm kind of offering broad looks at things so we can sew it all together in a nice little weaving project. Uh, so a thing to think about is, this is just my opinion. This is going to be one of those moments you tell me, I guess telepathically, because we're not together. But I came up with, when I think of people in the adult industry, what are characteristics that I think of that one would need to manage whatever it is that you manage, whether you're behind more the camera these days, whether you're more editing these days, whether you're in front of the camera, you're more of an in-person person, you're more of a session person. I guess those being fairly similar, crossing over. You being more of maybe a website-based camera person, I'm kind of an asynchronous person, which we'll talk more about these things later. And I was like, okay, I can come up with a lot of characteristics, but these are the ones that came up in the biggest way. Fluidity. That one can mean a lot of things, right? But an ability to kind of go with the flow of what is going on, or at the very least look like that's the case, in order to do the work. So changing from client to client, what based off of what they need, what their preferences are, how you're showing up today. You know, uh, Most people obviously will be like, yeah, sometimes this is more of a persona for me. Does it mesh with who I actually am off camera? Yes, but in other ways there's a persona here. So being able to shift into that quickly. Quick-witted, typically able to come up with a quip, a boundary, a line in the sand, hey, nope, you know, taking quick care of things. I especially think of folks that, have to manage chats sometimes and are like, you know, they're getting it done. Working hopefully in tandem with nice clients who are not, uh, being demanding and entitled. Similar to fast thinking, thinking on the fly. I mean, obviously, when it comes to stuff that you can control, a little easier, like a camera feed, like being able to turn on and off a camera, take a break, versus some in-person work where, you may not always be able to walk away, to be able to think on one's feet, essentially. Like if somebody does something, somebody says something, if things have shifted, um, especially if, suddenly somebody was very gung-ho about what they were getting the session for, but then they're having an unexpected response that was not previously discussed, written about, agreed upon. And this could be a variety of things. Um, maybe somebody thought that they were a veteran of this, but then something that day, as a client just triggered them to be able to think on the fly, like, how do I provide, you know, quick, quick care, aftercare, intervention with this person, or they said no matter what, literally, like, to to do X, Y, and Z, like to be able to make those decisions and kind of stay in a persona, so to say, just for ease. Creative, my goodness, like all the different categories, all the different camera points. I mean, there's some like real cinematography going on out there. And I wish more people understood that this isn't just some easy type of thing. Like people really are making like often full films, clips, and there's so much to consider. What they have to splice in, add in. Also, my gosh, the makeup, but sometimes more unique, at least in my perspective, which is not the most important perspective. Uh, Costuming, especially for people that do things maybe more with like diaper play or kind of doing the like giantess stuff, like the things that you have to do, the editing, the software, the manner of dress that you have to do to accomplish some of these clips. Yeah, I mean this really takes like a creative mindset. Very dynamic people, of course. Um, just engaging, sharp, kind. No, I always think of adult industry folks as very like no BS. Like shoot straight, let's go. Often, in my opinion, monotropic, which, if we're not familiar with that word, monotropism means single point of interest. This means a mind that does better with staying on one thing. So if I'm in a scene with somebody, I'm in a scene with somebody. If I'm in my hobby, I'm building Legos, I'm in my building Legos. If I'm painting, I'm painting. If I'm in my TTRPG, I am in my TTRPG. Monotropic split being what happens when you are immersed. I don't know why I immediately, this might not be a good reference to make right now. But anyways, well, I'm thinking of the Harry Potter moment of the with the, it's not the mirror, but it's like whatever, with the memories when you have like go into a little pool. That may have been really random to bring up, but anyways, immersed. Um, and monotropic split meaning you're being pulled out of it. So let's say that you're like really deep into something, and then you hear from the other room, "Hey, can you take a look at this? Come here." Or just your name called. If you're thinking about that and you're like, yeah. Seekers. And that may also sound like a strange thing. Like, what does that mean? But just seeking new opportunities, new ways to make things work for themselves. So why I bring this up, like you might be like, why are we just talking about random characteristics of people like myself? Hello? Because when I look at this, I see a lot of things that one would see in the neurodiverse community. That neurodiversity adds strengths, and then of course sometimes makes things harder, like with the monotropism. That can be double-edged, is like when somebody's immersed in something and then pulled out. Well, now I don't want to go back into that again, or I can't. Um, so things like that. Sometimes the fluidity, almost leading to maybe people pleasing, chameleoning, of course, masking, the things that people have to balance, counterbalance, and be aware of. So I'm not saying this is all a walk in the park and it's always so fun and clients rock and everything's great and awesome, but just really kind of trying to speak to, I think neurodiversity magnetizes itself to this industry, and this is just one lens of why that might be so, um, because it does ask for a lot of the strengths. And then, of course, the areas of difficulty we'll get to. But I would like you to take a moment to maybe think, like, what does it take for me to do this type of work? What are those strengths or characteristics that make this work more feasible for me, make me a good fit for it? Whether it's something you feel like is a naturally innate to you or you had to learn. Fun fact, personality is malleable. So if you think it would be worth a part of your life or something that you value or care about trying to do or be, you can do that. And I don't mean that in like some creepy, like, just change who you are. Let's people please and morph into one version of another, but just more like, hey, if you built up a skill, you built up a skill because you either needed it or you cared to need it, or you wanted to have it. So I'd love to hear what you feel like, or if you relate to some of these things on this list. All right, we'll keep it moving. Neurodivergent takeover. It's not really like, let's look back to the title. Always here, still here, but I was just trying to be a little silly. So let's get into what's going on here and maybe really unpack why these two things come together: industry work and neurodivergent experience. So there's some estimates. Anytime estimates happen, anytime numbers happen, you can only buy into them as much as, is statistically possible. Obviously, in research, we do not account for every single human being that exists. So this could be a bit over the top or could actually be more. But from things that I've seen, is that there is 4 to 5 times a potential of overrepresentation of neurodiverse people in the world of kink. Now, that's not exactly to say adult industry, but I thought it was important to bring up because we do see a lot of kink work in the adult industry. Some people do more, quote, vanilla work. That's cool. That's fine. But there might be some, foray into that sometimes. So neurodiverse people have a history with intimate play. The sensory, the mental, the social, emotional, those are kind of the 3 broad lenses that we can talk about of like, and again, another view of like, why does maybe this work pull or fit for some people? Um, Kinky communication overall, and I take this just to say like adult industry communication, like just work communication, can be, with the right tools, um, managed. Most people have some pretty strong boundaries or are working on them, and also expectations, especially depending on the type of work they're doing in the adult industry. There's some people that like, you must pay tribute to them before you even say hello or look in their direction. That's a pretty strong communication expectation, is I'm not going to get, randomly spoken to by somebody unexpectedly that I didn't seek to respond to or wasn't in the headspace to reply to. And if they do, there may be consequences of that, depending on the type of work that you do and how you show up. Um, so I think we can see it kind of, I'm not encouraging like, yay, a bubble, but this is work. Work has different boundaries than, just like maybe our day-to-day life. We may have more boundaries at work, usually not less, but it's whatever you need it to be to stay safe and sane, right? So at general, like if you are someone who does any type of in-person work or even online or even just, side chat rooms, things like that, one-on-ones, the clarity of this type of communication. I mean, think of people who have like tip boards and stuff like that. If you do this, this will happen. Most of the time, obviously, like unless, something different has changed, or is unable to happen. If you do this, I may do this. If you use hateful language, I'm going to do this. Boundaries are telling somebody else what you will be doing not telling them what they'll be doing. That would get into the realm of like expectations and rules, which in this type of work is absolutely possible and sometimes expected and most of the time normal. I'm thinking a lot of like Dom work. That's a lot of communication clarity. So if we think of neurodivergent experience, the desire for clear, dignified communication that doesn't have a bunch of mysteries to it, I think provides a lot of comfort for people. Most things are, sorry, I think my cat's punching a plate. So fun fact on that sound. Uh, if I have to get up and take care of it, I will. I'm just gonna put the plate away. Anyways, so this is a level of safe control, right? Theoretically, what's going to be said to me? What am I going to say? When this happens, this happens. If that happens, we're going to stop doing this. Okay, almost everything is accounted for, especially in certain scenes or expectations. So there's not this mystery of like, hey, how are you doing today? Oh, well, thanks for asking. Today's been a little bit of a tough day. Gotta get to some things later. Um, oh, I do have an interesting event coming up this weekend. Really, that person meant, but did not say, that being the important part. I was really trying to do the social event of, hi, how are you? Good. Hi, how are you? So, in the world like this, communications can be much more clear. Similar to like you see below, expectation, scening, planning. These can often be done in phases. There's advance notice. Sometimes there's written things. People can always go back to something and be like, hey, next time I just want to make sure that we really adhere to this because I noticed I was having some trouble when this didn't happen. So it's not like, well, I said, you said, oh, I don't know. Oh, are you sure? Da, 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 da. And then it's like getting into the weeds of like people's subjective experiences of how they interpreted things. Having things pinned down. Um, so safe harbor to relate back to. Especially, adult industry or not. A lot of experiences can be new. Obviously, maybe more on the client side, they might be titillating. Some people get certain responses from their work. Other people are like, this is my job. I'm not really doing that. So, and sometimes that's totally off limits for them too. So that's totally fine. Um, but I'm also bringing some of these things up that seem like they're relating to more like interpersonal intimacy instead of work intimacy because people can enjoy this in their lifestyle and then, you know, these are some people that maybe do end up walking the path towards the adult industry. Now, some people feel very separate from their work and they're like, things that I do at work, at home, they're like, I'm an asexual, aspectrum person and I don't really do a lot of the lifestyle work. That's fine. Just saying, like things that might draw you into some of these roles. Um, uncertainty in times of social connection. Any transitions to the sensual can or have been fear-provoking and awkward. Um, there's a lot of more clarity in these experiences. Not saying that nothing's ever awkward or that you feel, sensual with every person that you're working with, but obviously we do have to identify that these are more intimate experiences. Um, so generally, like this allows, subversion, experimentation, curiosity. Um, a lot of times people enjoy this type of work and or lifestyle because of the relationship to the taboo. Like, if I've always been told like I'm a freak and I'm a this and I'm a weirdo, like, well, maybe the freaks and weirdos, as according to the world, not according to anything I'm saying, um, got my back. Or maybe we all just need to be so for real about being human. That being human is a lot of the stuff that people in the adult industry see. I think that's why the people in the adult industry are so dynamic And so no BS. It's like they've seen the flip side of society. So instead of all this like neurotypical, hi, yes, oh, let's circle back to that. Oh, let's do our meeting. Oh, cool, yeah. Oh, have a great weekend. Oh, it's a hot one, isn't it? Instead of all that stuff, they see the same people that show up as that in their day to day as the people that are like, expressing really specific kinks. And they're like, okay. So it kind of shows that everyone has some relationship to the taboo, but of course, as a society and a culture, we all just kind of agree with each other, although I think a lot of us don't agree. But larger population agrees, like, no, that's not what's happening. Not at all. No, no, no. Everything's weird and strange and odd and awkward and off-putting and bizarre and freakish and unacceptable. And it's like, and you're the same person who's doing it at the end of the day. So I think neurodiverse people are almost like experts in managing the taboo because a lot of us have been interested in it. Because I've always thought of it like sometimes we're just trying to understand people and expressions, what we've been told is expected. I think of somebody that I spoke to that's like, yeah, sometimes I will watch like kinky porn, not to get off, but to almost kind of understand, like, if I'm interested in that, what happens in these experiences? Like, what's really going on? How do people react? How do different people react to pain? Maybe I don't act like that. Do I have to act like that? Well, no. And showing the wide variety of human experiences, which people don't really get to see because, again, we're all committed to the oh, yeah, doing well, all's good, kids are going to school, everything's cool. So anyways, I know this was kind of a long slide, but this is the meat and potatoes of things, right? Okay, we'll keep it moving. So let's talk about another reason. Disabilities. This may shape entry into sex work. Um, it really might. Some people have had interactions with this type of work before and then return to it when disabilities, um, maybe experience more challenge, or maybe they've always been into this type of work because they have what's called a dynamic disability, those being disabilities that don't always have the same needs at the same time. I lived with one of those. Sometimes I use like a walking stick and a cane. Other times I use a wheelchair. Sometimes I'm just, able to scoot around. I was going to say run around. I'm not running anywhere. Which that's not something that I'm dynamic with. Um, but anyways, a lot of people, enter this work because of these things. And sometimes it's not a physical or mobility related disability, but sometimes it's a neurodiverse one, like having to deal with coworkers, a front-facing experience with a bunch of customers, sounds, fluorescent lights, a boss, performance reviews, whatever the current payment is. I'm not trying to say that every adult industry person is bankrolling, but I'm just trying to say that some people would almost rather have control over the potential fluidity of that instead of the I keep getting this and I don't see a way out and up until I like mask more to go up the corporate ladder, so to say. Um, so generally, at least from many people that I've spoken to, sex work and adult work moves with the needs of the worker. Now, there's a huge, I would have put it on here, but it would have been so disruptive, a giant asterisk almost taking up the whole screen. Pending current affairs. I am under no illusion that there are not things, like, we've seen with FOSTA SESTA, we've seen with all this new age verification stuff, seemingly starting in the UK, but also trying to bounce over to US, the card processors and payment processors. I am really under no illusion that, I don't think that this type of work is just some, oh, happy day, everything's fine. Um, especially in certain sectors of it where it's even more controlled, where everything is age verification, this and that, um, which again, I can grasp small pieces of, but at the end of the day, that's a whole other conversation. And it goes back to most of the time, these laws do not seem to be at all about protecting children, but about creating immense difficulty and potentially even dysfunction and like unhoused experiences for people in the adult industry. And the same thing with the classic conflating it with trafficking. No one could make this choice. Why would they? Applying their own subjective experience to people in this work. So that is huge. That is like a giant, on the second point, a giant weight weighing it down. Now, if we were in this lovely, like, you know, place where sex workers and adult industry workers could just make their own rules and be left to their own devices to be safe and secure and be protected in some way, in a way that they agree to, not what someone else thinks is protecting them, then this point would be more salient. But generally, when people do have the ability to make some of their own rules and expectations, it can move with the needs of the worker. So it can be a means of survival, accommodation, self-empowerment, one, two, all the above, more, because I don't want to just frame, because I know I'm probably speaking to many people. I'm sure I'm speaking to some people who are like, I don't do this for fun. I don't really like a lot of it. I gotta do this to get by. These are the choices made to me by society that has made other decisions, like people that maybe have criminal backgrounds or people that don't have any current ability, or people with like certain immigration statuses, like things where other people, oh hello, have made choices that limit somebody's ability. Then of course there's people that are in this work more for the accommodation of like, hey, this is just when and how I need to work. Some people more for self-empowerment, whatever. It's personal experience. I really liked this quote that is from a Black adult industry worker. There was no last name. I also, wanted to make sure that that was fine to pull from the article as well, which you can see below. As sex work gives us the time and flexibility to sit and deeply consider what the world could be if everyone were affirmed in their wholeness. Our discarded position in society gives us the freedom to create a microcosm of this world by living the principles of interdependence as empowerment. And I just thought it good that we take a minute with that, you know, because I think we're noticing, and I'm hoping I'm communicating a balance here, right? I'm not trying to say neurodiverse people go into sex work because it's fun and cool and always accommodates their needs. Nor am I trying to make it like this is a hellscape and nobody's having a good time or learning about themselves at all. Um, but a bit of both, and what are some of those preliminary pathways to this? So, Zamaika, I think, has a great summarization that says it way better than I could. All right. So I'm not really going so much into the whole disability justice model, but drawing from disability justice in and of itself. And I loved this quote by Naomi Ortiz: there's an expectation of difference in the adult industry and in life. And I believe that this is such a simple and powerful way to think about people. Is we gotta have an expectation of difference. This is not oh, you're different. Ooh, that really stands out. I think sometimes it stands out in society because most people are taught, don't make it stand out. Don't get FMLA. Don't ask for those accommodations. Don't set that boundary. Don't ask for this from a boss. Don't say no. Don't turn down that client. So it looks like there's a scarcity of people with needs, which no. I see the other side of it where people talk to me about, sometimes I'll even say like this really could be something you get accommodations for, and I'll get back a variety of reasons, all valid. In this state of affairs, should I put myself, out there like that? Um, I don't want people to know this about me. This feels like sharing a lot. I don't need it. Somebody else does more than me, which that's really one of the few that I kind of jump on, and I'm like, is there only one person in the world who's allowed to ask for things that they need? There's just one little person who gets to cross their arms and go, it's just me. All of you have to figure it out. But anyways, here's some things that I think call to neurodiverse people, and if you have multiple marginalizations and also maybe physical, experiences, mobility, disabilities. I don't want to define for you what you have and what words you'd use. Um, but flexible hours, right? That's one big thing, that for most cases, obviously if somebody's like, hey, you're on at the club and here's your hours, maybe not so flexible. Maybe flexible for other things in life, and that some people are able to work less time and get more, you know, monetary compensation, whereas some people can't and don't, um, because of whatever's going on in their geographical location, who they are, how they're being treated by others. Um, but at the end of the day, many of the times there can be flexible hours. Um, some people work from home, right? There's some people that only do like campsite work. They will just do like some texting, phone call work, things like that. Being able to be around comfort items, dressing and being in ways that you may like. Obviously, sometimes they're not great sensory experiences, and some people are like, I had to dress up for this, client, and it was, I couldn't wait to get out of all this stuff I had on. And other people love it. I know some people who really love being in latex, and will keep it on even after they've, met with their client. They're like, I just like it. Um, Maybe being able to be around pets, which I am right now. I'm actually going to throw a mouse for my little cat. So, um, potentially, not always, but being one's own boss. Some people love this, hate this. Some people do not have this, depending on the type of adult industry work that they do. But the possibility for this, consent-based practices, going back to what we talked about before about communication, expectations, boundaries, use of mobility aids. I would say this I see more commonly in people that do like online work from home work, or people that do in-person like sessioning type work, where that can be a part of it, that people are aware that they're working with somebody that maybe uses mobility aids. Or if they don't and they don't use them during work hours, they're maybe more able to use them at home instead of, again, having to go somewhere, and deal with that. Oh, I did not account for the Roomba going, so I will be back. Okay, quick scenery change. I I know that y'all were probably already hearing some cat running sounds, some litter box sounds. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of places without sounds. Uh, so I definitely don't want to make you listen to the Roomba. But anyways, and then another piece which I've kind of been talking about is the asynchronous work. A lot of people are able to do work where it's not this like snap thing. Like obviously in like live cam rooms, it is kind of like that. Somebody says something, you're supposed to respond at some amount of time, unless you have other things, rules around that. But then a lot of times I will know people who everything they do is at home on their own terms, and they're never like seen live. They make clips, they sell clips, they do virtual, maybe like sessions that were set up of their own choice, cam calls, or they may not do that at all and are just kind of doing texting. sending pictures. So really everything they do is super on their own terms. So if we think of that, that does tend to fit much better with a neurodiverse lifestyle instead of, again, if we think of like a traditional corporate office workspace where you could be called on at any time, um, people are just saying whatever, you're put on the spot, you're expected to live under fluorescent lights and people jumping into your office and getting emailed, being expected to answer in 2 seconds. All those things are why people flee these workspaces. So there's that. So before we wrap everything up, I just wanted to put this out there. I'm not editing some of these things out because it's just like it would be if it were alive. If I sneeze, I sneeze. Um, Anyways, so no matter if you are neurodiverse as quote confirmed, put that loosely, because that's a whole other can of worms to get into, by a professional, self-diagnosed, questioning, unsure, or far from questioning. Maybe you do not relate to the neurodiverse experience at all, and you're like, oh, that's cool, that's good for me to know for my partner, bestie. You're welcome here. I mean, here, yeah, here in this talk, but here in this world. Um, and something I believe in strongly is no matter who and what you are and what your lived experience is, tools for one are tools for all. So even if you're like, oh, I'm not neurodiverse, but darn, it really does sound good to put do not disturb on my phone, or only set up phone calls, at certain times so people, aren't just calling you on the fly. That's for you then. Some people will say, well, oh man, I see a really cool pillow that my friend with a mobility condition uses or sensory condition uses. It feels really soft. I like that, but I don't need it. It's yours. Use it. Most communities are like, as long as you're respectful, like, please live your life. We all deserve to feel dignified. And I think a lot of us live in a scarcity mindset where we're like, no, I can't do this, I can't do that. And even today, as we were talking, if you heard something and you were like, could I implement that in my work? Well, no, I don't need to because I'm not this enough or that enough. It's for you. Do it. It's yours. So, tools for one or tools for all. Doesn't matter what community you're in or not. Obviously, I don't want to say a sweeping thing. There's some things where we could get into more unique conversations where it's like, okay, now we are actually pulling from people, but most of the time we think that, and it's often not true. Like you using a certain pillow in your own house, or wanting to use a fidget toy just because you find it cute. You're not taking the last fidget toy from the last neurodiverse person. And of course, if you are neurodiverse and you think you're not enough neurodiverse, well, same thing applies. It's for you. Yeah. So that's all, folks. So, quick thing. Are you unfamiliar with what pineapple offers? I can tell you. So, this, right? Conversations like this, sometimes live, sometimes not. Webinars, workshops, which are usually a little bit longer, more interactive piece. Support groups, ability to help you navigate one-on-one individual therapy or otherwise, um, education, resources, challenges, uh, so much. And then, of course, usually a presence at a lot of adult industry conventions. So, however you want to interact and engage, feel free. And please, if you're watching this and you're like, well, I don't need some of those things, but like, I like this and I want to be involved. We have ambassadors. Check it out. I'm a big fan of just go ask. You never know what somebody's going to say. So, anyways, um, my name's Rainier. You've been great. I've been Rainier. So, until next time, I hope that some of this gelled with you and take care.